All right, folks, let's get underway. I think everybody who's here has had a chance to join in, so anybody who's late will join us later on. Thanks very much for joining us today. So my name is Alex. I'm the head of product management for DBVisit Software. Hopefully, some of you I have met before, and I'm joined today by Daniel Westerman from our very good friends DBI Services over in Switzerland. Daniel is a consummate PostgreSQL expert and has very kindly agreed to lend his expertise to all of us today. So DBVisit, as most of you will likely know, comes from an Oracle background. So we're very aware of the fact that there's a drive towards the PostgreSQL world from Oracle and more interest every year. And so we thought it might be fun to do this session, kind of talking quite a high level session, not very technical, just talking about PostgreSQL, the history of it, some basic concepts, where it comes from, just stuff that may be obvious to the PostgreSQL experts out there, but something that Oracle, people that come from the Oracle background like ourselves, might find interesting and entertaining. So just before we start, if you do have any questions, please put them in chat at any time. Don't wait, chat or Q&A, and we'll try and answer them at some point during the session. Don't leave them till the end. Other than that,
we already have a question, Alex.
oh, there's already a question.
Anonymous question. Are those
they're not binoculars, sir. They're actually a telescope. Because what you can't see is this is not a wall. These are blind curtains. I'm actually joining you from the 19th floor today, high above Auckland, New Zealand, and Daniel is here from Bern in Switzerland. So this is very much a multinational presentation this morning. Or
actually, it's Basel. It's not Bern, but
that's Basel. Oh, there you go. Anyway, let's get into it because Daniel's got a lot of great content for us. So over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, welcome from my side. Thanks, Alex, for the introduction. So let's talk a bit about Postgres, especially if you have an Oracle background. What you will see in the next 45 minutes is also a bit of personal experience, because I did 15 years of Oracle as well, and changed to the Postgres world some 10 years ago. So I'll keep the marketing stuff short. We are Swiss-based. We are doing all sorts of databases. That, of course, includes Postgres, Oracle, but also SQL Server, you name them. We do that for consulting services, service level agreements, also workshops if you're interested. And if it goes to commercial stuff, it's also about license management. So, but nothing much more about me. Let's start. This guy, you know him already, Alex. He wanted to have an agenda. Usually I don't do any agendas. Because he wanted to have one, here is one. So we start with a short history of Postgres, because I personally think it's important to know where a product is coming from and how it started, how it evolved. We will then dive into how Postgres is developed. This is maybe totally different from what you already know from Oracle or SQL Server or whatever. Another important point is how do I get support? And this is open source. There's no support contract or something like that. So you need to know this. How to get involved? I'll say a couple of more things about that topic later on, because this is quite important. And finally, don't do this, because there are some things you should avoid in the Postgres world or even in the open source world. Good, let's start with the history of Postgres. For this, we need to go back in time a bit to the early 70s or 8 of the 60s. I know you can't answer, but I'm asking anyway. Maybe someone has seen this guy, not alive anymore. Give you a few seconds to think about it. It's not Alfred Hitchcock, by the way. So this was or is Edgar F. Cott, and what he did by the end of the 60s, he wrote a paper which was called the Relational Model for Database Management. This paper is the base for all the relational databases we know today, because before that, the only option you had was a kind of hierarchical database. And the hierarchical database, what was special about that is that you, as the user, had to know how to go to the data. You can think of it like the Windows Explorer. If you have this tree, and then you scroll down until you find what you need. What this paper described, you can even download that. It's freely available in the internet. For the first time are all these concepts we know today. So tuples, which are actually rows, which are grouped into relations. This is coming all out of the relational algebra. And all of these relations are grouped into a relational database. The modern thing about this was that for the very first time, you had a declarative way of asking the database system, please give me data, and the database itself was in charge of finding out the most efficient paths to the data. So this was also how SQL started, the declarative way of specifying what you want to have. A bit later, this guy is still alive, Michael Stonebrater, University of Berkeley. Maybe you know him. What he did based on that paper of code, he created a reference implementation which was called Ingress. Ingress stood or stands for Integrated Graphical Retrieval System. This is, by the way, also the name why Postgres is named Postgres. That just means after Ingress. And as you can see on the slide, the development time for that was mid of the 80s until mid of the 90s. Also freely available in the internet. So if you're interested in the initial design and implementation of Ingress, go download that and read it. Much of the things are still true today in Postgres. He tried later to commercialize that with a company called Illustra. I'm sure you heard about Informix, which integrated that into the Universal Server, which was bought by IBM in 2001 for $1 billion, even at that time. So that was quite some money. And at the same time, the Postgres dialect for retrieving the data was replaced with an extended subset of SQL. Postgres was again renamed in Postgres 95, but it became clear pretty fast that 95 is not a good name, so it was again renamed. And in 1996, Postgres started its life as a real community open source project in the internet. And just to show that a lot of work has been done already on the university, the first official version of the open source Postgres is version 6. So just a bit of background. These are the guys who started that. The one to the very right, Tom Lane, is still very, very active today. And you're using software from this guy every day on your phones because he also developed the PNG and the TIFF standards. The one here is Bruce Momian working at EDB today. He, for example, wrote PG Upgrade and today is still taking care about the release notes. I'm not sure about the other ones, but you see that started very small. You will see another picture later on where you can see how that is growing over time. So maybe one of the most important things about Postgres, especially if you come out of the Oracle world, is the Postgres license. Basically, it's what you can read in blue here, and this is one of the most liberal licenses you can find on the world. You can compare it to the MIT or the BSD licenses, so FreeBSD, NetBSD, OpenBSD, because what this license explicitly grants you, what the GPL does not, is you can modify the source code and you're not forced to give back your modifications to the community. In the Postgres world and also in the FreeBSD world, this is absolutely okay. This is why you see, for example, all the cloud services like an Amazon RDS or a flexible server. And this is only possible because of this license. You can do whatever you want. One of the questions always coming up from Oracle people is who is controlling Postgres? There are two answers which are correct. The first one is nobody, and the second one is you. So basically, it's the community. You wanted to say something, Alex?
We don't ask because we're paranoid, Daniel. We do it because we care.
Okay. There are some formal groups. You will see that on the next slides. But the most important topic, and this is not only true for Postgres, that's true for all the real open source projects, anyone can join. All you need to do is you need to participate in the discussions, and you will see how that works later on. One of the groups is called the Postgres Global Development Group, but that's more a formal thing. So if a new release is coming out, you will always see in the press releases the Postgres Global Development Group announces, and then blah, blah, blah. But this means all the people doing something with the Postgres project. So that's developing C code, that's writing documentation, that's whatever it takes to make a Postgres release. And you also see in the picture below, that's from 2015. The community is growing quite fast. All the big companies are jumping on the train, which means AWS, Microsoft, they all see the potential and are driving that product forward.
Are you in that photo somewhere, Daniel?
No, not in this one. Usually I try to avoid being in some kind of group pictures.
I was looking for you in that photo.
No, you won't find me. I was at an Oracle conference 2 weeks ago, and then an Oracle guy told the audience that the Postgres core team is driving the direction of Postgres. And this is not true. So if you read something like that, don't believe it. The Postgres core team is not deciding anything with Postgres. It's just responsible for the 4 points you see on the slides, so setting release dates, handle confidential matters, and things like that. It's not driving the product, and it's not deciding what's coming into Postgres. That's not the task of the core team. By the way, FreeBSD has the same concept. They also have a core team doing the same kind of things. But again, they are not driving any decisions related to what features are coming into the Postgres. Who currently is in the core team and who is a major contributor currently is all transparently listed on the website. For the core team, there's one rule. It's usually 5 to 7 people, but not more than 2 people from the same company, just to avoid that one company is over-present in that group. What I quickly wanted to show you is a bit of history in the timeline. So this was the paper of code. If you look at the time frame, it's the 70s. You already know there was one reference implementation which was called Ingress, done by Stonebreaker at the University of Berkeley. And there was another one which was called System R, which was done at IBM itself. And if you look under System R, there are exactly 2 databases which are alive today. The first one is obviously DB2. And the other one, if you go down the tree, Oracle was called Relational Software Incorporated before it was called Oracle. So that's the 2 behind or below System R. And all the others, you know, today are behind Ingress. There's Postgres, there's SQL Server, there's Sybase, there's Informix, whatever. Why I'm showing this is just to make you aware how important this reference implementation called Ingrid was for the database landscape we know today. So what it means is all of
Can you zoom out? How big is this diagram? Is there other stuff on here that we might recognize? For example, is SQL Server somewhere on here?
SQL Server is below Ingress. Yeah, you will find that.
On the right, it was on the right-hand side there.
So you have
Cool.
Sybase, SQL Server. What you also see here is MySQL does not have any connection at all to that relational world. This is why at the very beginning, MySQL could not do anything. There haven't been any foreign keys, constraints, and things like that.
We'll try and make this diagram available after this webinar if anybody is interested, because it actually looks a lot of fun to read.
Yeah, sure. You see here's the SQL Server tree. Fun fact is the first version of SQL Server was running on a Unix, and it was not on Windows, for those of you who don't know. Good. Again, that's the group picture from 2015. It's growing very fast. Maybe another fun fact is, why did the community choose the elephant as a logo? If you read it, it's quite obvious. Elephants can remember, and the database should do that as well. You don't want to lose any data, so that's the reason for the elephant.
Surely there must be some Russian angle to it. I mean, isn't the logo called Slonik?
Yeah, but you see, David Young was not a Russian guy.
No, yeah. I wonder why the logo is called Slonik. Something to it's a homework project to go and research.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that was a bit of the history, which I think is quite important. So let's look at how Postgres is developed. I mean, if you look at Oracle or Microsoft or you name them, you don't have much insight on how development is going on. In Postgres, this is totally different. But before we dive into that, let's look what we need. Postgres needs to run an operating system. And if you look at Oracle, they are certifying on various flavors of Linux or whatever. There needs to be some kind of bug tracking. There needs to be, of course, source code control. There needs to be decisions. Someone needs to decide what is coming in. Maybe a patch gets also rejected, which happens from time to time. And someone also needs to work on security and bug fixes. When we look at all those requirements from a commercial perspective, what do we need? We obviously need a support contract. We need access to a support portal to download patches, to create service requests or whatever. Maybe we need a subscription if it goes to Red Hat or SUSE. We need access to patches. We need maybe a lot of patience. And of course, we need money. That's all not cheap. The good thing is, what do we need for Postgres? You need exactly one thing, and that's an email address. And that's all you need. That's it. So why? When it comes to software development in Postgres, there is exactly one place to be, and this is Postgres Hackers. So this is a mailing list that works pretty much the same as development in the Linux kernel or also on the BSDs. All the development goes over that list. Don't be scared by that picture. In reality, they look more like this. So all kinds of people from all over the world. The one to the very left, Andres Freund, by the way, was the one who discovered this XZ vulnerability in Linux some weeks ago. This is Tom Lane, how he's looking today, Thomas Munro, and so on. But we saw also quite some women. So these are the people behind the code. And again, this is the place to be, Postgres Hackers. This is where development is going. All the patches on that list, you will see an example in a few seconds, go over that list. So it's not only emails, it's also the patches or the features attached as plain text ASCII to those emails. One of the examples is this one. This is also an example for one of the features which was finally rejected. But if you look at that thread, that's the mail. You don't need an account to look at this. You can just go there. And I don't know if you can see this, how large this discussion is. This is how decisions are driven in Postgres. So someone is writing an email, then you have replies to that email, and in the end, if more people are okay with it, it's going in, and if more people are not okay with it, then it's not going in. So this has nothing to do with the Postgres core team. This is plain discussions on the mailing lists.
And
this is how it works.
Is it a policy that like all of these emails, all of these discussions are always public?
Everything is public. There's one exception, which is the security mailing list, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is public to the whole internet without an account. So for these mailing list archives, if you go here, community, mailing lists, whatever you take, let's take the general one. That's the where all the general stuff goes in. And for this, you can go back to the very first email in 1998. Wow. So in the Oracle world, this would be your My Oracle support. So instead of going there in Postgres, you go here, and then you search the archives.
Mm-hmm.
Most probably someone else already had your question answered or faced your problem or whatever. If you can't find anything, and you will see that later, then you have to write an email. This is how it works. But public to everybody. So if you put sensitive information into the email, bad luck. Huh? Okay, that was one example of this. So the question is why emails? And if you look at how most of the products are developed today, they are either on GitHub or GitLab, and they work with issues and merge requests and pull requests and whatever. The Postgres project and also the BSD project and also the Linux kernel project are not doing this. Everything goes over email. There is a GitHub mirror for Postgres, which is this one. But you will see there are no merge requests, there are no issues, there's nothing. Development is not happening here. This is a plain mirror where you can have a look at the source code, but that's it. So why? Basically, the most important point is it just works. It's plain text ASCII. Everybody in the world can read plain text emails. All you need is either a mail client or a browser. But even more important, the community is maintaining its own infrastructure. And maintaining a mailing list is pretty simple. If the community would decide to go to, for example, GitHub, and then Microsoft is coming and buys GitHub, what happened a few years ago, and nobody knows what Microsoft will be doing with that GitHub, then you create a dependency which the community wants to avoid. So simple email lists, maintain it in the community itself, avoid external dependencies, so the project can stay independent. That's the reasons for email. And as I said, that's the same with Linux kernel development, and that's the same for all the FreeBSDs. And please, if you write emails, don't top post. Top posting is what Outlook clients usually do. So when you press reply in Outlook, your reply comes on top, and all the history comes below that. Please don't do that on the Postgres mailing lists. Don't do that on the Linux mailing lists, on any mailing lists related to open source, because if you do that, you're losing the context. Remember this TDA thread I just showed in the browser? That's several hundreds of pages of email and discussion. And if you want to keep the context, what you do is so-called inline quoting. So this here is the answer to that text of the original mail. And if you do it like this, everybody can follow the context and the discussion. This is really, really important.
Daniel, I don't want to, we're not going to do a deep dive into this guy. I don't want to derail the presentation, but it's just purely for personal interest. The problem with doing this over email is surely is that what happens if a lot of people feel strongly about something and you know there's a lot of people contributing to Postgres. So what happens if an email chain just hundreds of messages an hour start appearing? I mean, somebody has to read all of them and then make a decision. So what happens then?
What happens when?
What happens if a particular email thread for a feature inclusion or something like that just becomes thousands of pages long? I mean, does that happen?
Of course.
And somebody reads all of them and still makes a decision?
Nobody is reading all the emails, but a lot of people are reading. I know I lost this one. Of course, the threads they are interested in. And if you look at this one, this is already hundreds of emails and discussions. And you see all the replies always quote to this, and then it's going on and it's going on and it's going on. And in the end, you either have a majority who says, okay, this is something we want to have, or you have a majority which thinks, no, either this needs improvements in the design or we don't want to have that at all. It's pure democracy majority based.
And then ultimately somebody either from the core team or another team that I know you'll mention later on will just make a decision.
No, the core team is not involved at all in this.
Right. So who would then make a call based on all these exchanges?
It's like in a democracy, the majority wins. So if the majority, I will talk about committers later on. So not everybody is allowed to commit into the source tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is great stuff. Please continue.
Yeah, I will show that later. Okay, again, it's all about context. So if you write emails, please put context, do inline quoting. There's a whole Wikipedia page about posting styles. Maybe you should read this. This is explaining the topic very well. Okay, on top of that, now we come to that, Alex, there are commit fests. You can see the commit fests like a graphical user interface about the hackers mailing list. So if you go and take one, which is open or either future, what you will see here, these are all the patches, features, whatever it is, the community is currently working on. If you take one of those, this always links back to the email, which is this one, no? And then you go back to hackers. The important point here is this always has a status, waiting on author. I think it's obvious, ready for committer. Could be committed. You always have one or more people writing the patch. You need reviewers. So there's nothing being committed without a review. And finally, you have a committer. A committer, I think currently there are between 20 and 30 people who are allowed to commit something. And I'm not sure if you are aware of this command, git blame.
I have it used often against me.
Yeah, but this is exactly about that one. So no matter, imagine one of the committers is committing this, then this committer is taking responsibility for that patch, even if he didn't write it. So if something goes wrong with that patch, it's the responsibility of the committer to either get it fixed on his own or to get the people involved again and then see that it's working for future versions. This is also where git blame is coming from. For being a committer, you have to earn trust over several years. So you have to prove that you can write the C code, which is required for Postgres, that you can write documentation and tests and all that stuff. And every year, I think end of year in Ottawa, there's the Postgres Developer Conference where new committers are announced. But that takes years until you come to that stage where you are considered to be a committer. So this is how it works. This is also a way to check what is currently going on in Postgres. So if you want to see what's probably in Postgres 18, September next year or October next year, this is how you can see what the community is working on. No? And again, this is not at all related to the core team. Core team has nothing to do with this. Good. Another thing you have is a so-called CF bot. This is also public. Can I move that bar somehow? This is constantly testing patches which are in the commit fest but not yet committed. This is also a community project around Postgres maintained by some of the people interested in that. There's also the so-called build farm, again, public, available to everybody in the internet. This is how Postgres not certifies, but testing patches or the whole release against various operating systems. And if you compare that to Oracle, this list is really huge. And of course, you can find all the flavors of Linux, but you can also find Raspberries and FreeBSDs and AAX and Solaris and whatever. So if your OS is showing up here, you can consider Postgres to be supported. There's one block of OS per Git branch. So this is the current development. And then you have one block per currently supported major version. So that would be 17. When the regression test suite is running against all these operating systems and something is going to red, then you have the git blame case. So the one who committed that is supposed to fix it again. No? So this is how Postgres is being tested. So far, so good.
Absolutely, yeah. So just before we move on, I've got just a small question about because you mentioned earlier the Dev conference, the PGCon in Ottawa, Canada. I think that's the big Dev conference. Would it be fair to say that in the PostgreSQL world, most of the conferences, the in-person conferences, are really builder conferences, developer conferences? The reason I ask that is because in the Oracle world, we're kind of used to conferences being primarily for Oracle users. Oracle conferences are about DBAs and about integrators, about people who use Oracle. But Postgres conferences, and I've been to a few now, some of them with yourself, they seem to be focused not so much on using Postgres, but more building it, expanding it. Is that a fair comment, do you think?
No, it's both. Also the one in Ottawa is clearly focused on the developers. But what we do under the umbrella of Postgres Europe, you will see that later, that is Postgres Conference Europe. This is also Postgres Conference Germany or the Swiss PG Day. And there we have tracks. Usually there is a developer track, which is true. But there's also a DBA track and then things like that. And those conferences are more focused on the end user, being it the DBA or the developer which develops on top of Postgres.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Good. Then let's move on and look at support. Support in Postgres, you should already know how that works. Same topic as before, mailing lists. So it's your responsibility to write in a detailed email what your problem really is. Basically, you have two options. Either you do that on your own, or you pay someone else to do it for you. Doing it on your own means getting in touch with the community via the mailing lists. You can also pay someone. This you will also find on the Postgres website. Support, here you have professional services grouped by region. And then, of course, you come to DBA services. Okay, that's a joke, no, but you can find all the companies doing professional support here. If you don't want to do it on your own, select the one you trust. And then, of course, it costs you something. And then you can have more or less the same experience as you know it today with an Oracle support contract.
It's not a joke. Just, I'd like to say that if anyone on the call is interested in Postgres managed services, DBI is very much the company you want to call.
Thanks, Alex. But please remember always, if you work with Postgres, the Postgres project is not selling you any services and it's not selling you any product. It's a community thing. So you get something for free, but nothing more. So responsibility in the open source world is on your side, except you pay someone else for doing it. So the fastest way to get support in that case, write a clear email with all the rules I told you. Don't do top posting and things like that. Put as much information as you can, so at least the Postgres version, the operating system you're running on. If it's about slow queries, maybe put the execution plan, and in the best case, provide a self-contained test case. If you found a bug and you can prove that, you usually can expect to have that fixed in a few days. If you install from source code, you can immediately apply that in your test environment and see if it's fixed, and then you're done.
Daniel, can I ask if, with this mechanism, is this a good pathway for just asking simple questions? Because typically when you, typically when you address the developer community directly, they kind of, with a simple question, they kind of direct you to, oh, this has been answered 100 million times. Go to here, or go to a board, or go to the history or whatever. Is this a good way to seek out help for basic issues, or is this really more just when you think you found a bug?
You have to choose the correct mailing list. So if it's more about general stuff, it's PGSQL general. If it's about performance, there's PGSQL performance. If you think it's a bug, there's a bugs mailing list. So please go here and take the appropriate mailing list.
So
don't send general questions to hackers. This is not the right place to post questions like that.
But taking general as an example, so PSQL general is a good and appropriate place to ask basic questions?
Of course.
Okay.
I can show you one example from my real life. Maybe what you have to know by default is just searching within the last year. So I had a performance issue after migrating from Oracle to Postgres, and just to show you how that works. And I sent the mail early in the morning at 7:12, describing my issue and attaching a test case. The first answer 1 hour later, but more important, it was about PGSQL, so the procedural language in Postgres. 1 hour later from Pavel, Pavel is one of the guys developing this language. So this is an answer you can trust. And if you know the people in the community, you get answers from the people who wrote that stuff. And 1.5 hours later, it was clear what the problem actually is.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
It's good that you showed that, because that's exactly what I was trying to see how it works.
Yeah, but what you have to do is really to take your time and write a clear email. This is really important. And select the right mailing list, of course. Okay, finally, getting involved. This is also important in Postgres, as it is in any open source project. There are many ways to do that. Of course, you can write patches and new features, and this really can be as simple as this. This was a typo in a comment, I think, or a word was missing. And even if you do things like that, you are credited with your name in Git. So everybody who is doing something will be credited. This is how the community is working. And this really can be as simple as a typo. It does not need to be a C procedure something. Whatever needs to be fixed, needs to be fixed. You can also work on translations. This is a bit more work. For example, there's a press kit every year when a new Postgres major version is released. So that's several pages of technical English text, which has to be translated in all the other languages. This is something you could help with. You could help with the documentation, of course. Documentation is also tracked in Git. Here is one example where it was not clear what a specific feature is doing. You can also improve that. And you see, you even get answers from Tom Lane, so there's no hierarchy, don't be afraid. If you behave correctly, you will get answers from the real experts. Don't be surprised.
Just
Testing.
remind everyone's memory. Who's Tom Lane?
Tom Lane is one of the few guys who started the open source project back in the mid of the 90s. So he's maybe the most experienced developer at all in Postgres.
Was he one of the gentlemen you were pointing out in the very first photograph?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, another area which is really important is testing of patches and reviewing. Another example here, go to the commit fest, download patches you are interested in and test them, and then report back to the community. The patch is doing what it's supposed to be, it's not doing what it's supposed to be, documentation is missing or documentation is not clear, test cases are fine, whatever. So every help is really appreciated and it can really be simple. Another way is find your local community. You will also find them on the Postgres website. So no matter if you're based in Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Germany, New Zealand, Australia, wherever there are Postgres user groups all over the world. So this is one way to get in touch with the people in the Postgres world and to build your network. You can also help in organizing events, conferences, whatever. So this is the example of Postgres Europe. There's also Postgres US. I'm not sure if there's an official one in Australia or New Zealand. You would need to check. And you see, we run a lot of conferences, so across Europe. Conferences need to be organized. You need to organize the hotels, the rooms, the talks, whatever. So this is a lot of work. Also something you can help with easily. You could be part of the code of conduct committee. So if people are misbehaving on the mailing lists or on conferences or whatever, this is the group which handles that. They are always looking for people to help. You could also start by answering questions on the mailing list. So that's the example I've showed you before with the performance problems I had. So help other people. This is also a way to get used to how the community is working, how the mailing lists are working, how the product is working. And finally, if you want, you could also provide test machines. So this is what you've seen in the build form, because these build form client can be downloaded. That's just a set of Perl scripts. Put that onto your machine, and then you report back to the Postgres build farm. Fun fact, maybe Postgres 17 dropped the support for AEX because nobody was taking care of that specific code. And then a company showed up and said, hey, we need that. And they really spent some money. So probably Postgres 18 will reintroduce the support for AEX. So also things like this can happen.
So I just want to spend 30 seconds on that again. So what you said is that you know it's an open source community project. Support for something was being dropped because nobody seemed to care too much, and then
Yeah,
the company, the people that did happen to care in this case, just they announced it, they told people, they contributed some resource, and as you say, the next version because of this will actually probably be again available on AIX. Is that correct?
exactly.
So if you care about something within the Postgres world and you take some action towards helping make that happen, then there's no politics. It just works.
Yeah, there's no politics at all in the Postgres community. It's pure technical discussions.
Awesome.
So then, last point for today, don't do this. There are some of the things I had to learn quite hard at the beginning. So first of all, let's talk about some assumptions people usually have. So a typical thing with pops-ups quite frequently is something like this. Why does this feature not exist in Postgres? Other databases can do that since ages. I absolutely need this, and if I don't have it, I cannot use Postgres. So there are a couple of things wrong with that. First one is other databases can do that since ages. Okay, maybe not, but Postgres is not Oracle, it's not SQL Server, it's also not MariaDB and not any other database. It's Postgres. So if you start using that, stick to what the product is. That's the first thing to remember. The second one is this. What you usually get as answer to such a statement is patch is welcome. That might surprise you, but if you think something is missing in Postgres, someone has to work on that. So either you pay someone who does the work, or you does it, or you're doing it on your own. But this is the big difference between commercial software and open source software. You need to do something, and if you do such a statement, I absolutely need this. Okay, might be. Then you have to do something. Either spend some money on people implementing it for you or implement it on your own. This is how it works, and not blaming the project for something which is not available.
So another thing that I'd just like to add here is I know that that you personally, Daniel, and DBI services in general, you've done a fair number of migrations from Oracle to Postgres, and sometimes people think that they need a particular feature and they can't do without it because that's how they've got the database implemented in Oracle or SQL Server or wherever else. And what actually happens is if they're just informed and educated as to the way that Postgres works, they find they can actually do without it. So if you think that there's some critical feature on Oracle that you absolutely need and Postgres doesn't have it, and so it's not possible for you to migrate, I would just urge you to contact a competent service provider that will be able to give you some advice with regards to that migration, because it's entirely possible that that feature you think is absolutely non-negotiable is actually negotiable after all.
Exactly. And then this is what you just said is, it's also true in the other way. Postgres has features which are till today missing in Oracle. And then it's also true Oracle is not Postgres, and in the same way Postgres is not Oracle. So you have to get used to the product to know the features, but maybe also to know the limitations. And you have limitations in all these databases, also in Oracle. And then start educating yourself. Okay. I've said this several times, Postgres is a real community project, and this comes with consequences. One of the consequences is Postgres depends on contributions. Could be you, but without contributions, that whole thing does not work. Another consequence is there is no roadmap. There is a roadmap page on the homepage, but if you go there, where's the roadmap? So this is the roadmap. All you will find here are the dates for the next minor releases. That's it. Why? Because again, it's not related to the core team. The developers drive the product. So developers decide what they want to work on. There is no marketing, there is no roadmap. It's just not existing. Good. If something is missing, I said that, then maybe you need to start a discussion. Again, you need to write a mail describing what you want to do, preferable before you code anything, just to get a feeling if this feature, bug fix, whatever it is really wanted. And remember, don't. Oh, there's my presentation here. Don't do this. There's a dedicated wiki page for this. Please learn that. It's again in the way. Which is this one. There are a couple of things you should avoid. One of the more popular ones is don't use not in. Not because Postgres is too dumb to do that. This actually has reasons in the SQL standard and the handling of nulls. So if you learn about this page, you can avoid some trouble. So please take a look. You have the link in the slides. So people took time to write down things you should avoid. So please avoid them. And then don't do this and then later on complain that it's not working as in the way you want it. So before posting performance-related questions, there's another wiki page you should read. Slow query questions. Please read this before you post anything related to SQL performance. Before you start another discussion about optimizer hints, which are quite popular in Oracle, there's a dedicated wiki page. Please read this. These are the reasons why the Postgres community will not implement hints. You don't have to agree with these points, but you have to accept the decision of the community. If you can't live without hints, there's an extension, an external extension, which you can use, but please make yourself familiar why it is the way it is. The same for autonomous transaction. They do not exist in Postgres, and they do not exist for these reasons. Please have a look, and please also have a look at the workarounds you can use. There are sub-transactions and things like that in Postgres, but there are no autonomous transactions. In general, maybe a lot of discussions already took place. Please search the archive before posting the same question over and over again. At least make yourself familiar with the reasons. This does not mean that you can't improve things, but you have to be familiar with the history, why it's implemented like it is, and why the limitations are there. Always remember, answers on the mailing lists for you are for free. Nobody is charging you for that. People are usually doing that in your spare time, and they are humans. So don't start blaming. Of course, those people get paid, and they are usually working for bigger companies like Amazon, like Fujitsu, you name them. Of course, they are paid, but they are not paid to support you for free. Always keep that in mind. But they usually do that anyway, and they love to support you. Final slide. If you use Postgres in the cloud, any managed service, doesn't matter if it's AWS, Microsoft, Google, or Oracle, or whatever, this is not community Postgres. And this also happens from time to time. If you have an issue, no matter if it's performance or something in a cloud service, please don't post that on the Postgres community mailing lists, because those services are not community Postgres. They are modified. Nobody knows what is modified. Please go to the vendor in that case. So that's it from my side. I'm open to questions if there are any.
Oh, there's lots of questions, Daniel. Awesome, thanks for that. I've got questions for you. We also have questions from the audience, as it were. So let's address those first. So the very first question is very pertinent to disaster recovery and DB visit, and it's what is the difference between high availability and replication disaster recovery on PostgreSQL? This is a question that I get a lot actually from our partners at DB visit. In the Oracle world, disaster recovery and high availability are two very clearly defined concepts. But in the Postgres world, they're kind of, they're usually treated to be quite similar. Is that right?
I would even say that the concepts are exactly the same. And high availability is something where you want to keep your service up and running as much as you can. And disaster recovery is recovering from a disaster, then the service is anyway gone.
So if I can put it another way, if a client came to you and basically said, right, we would like help with disaster recovery for Postgres, and then another client said we would like help with high availability for Postgres, would you consult them in more or less the same way?
Yes, and I would anyway say you cannot do one thing without the other.
Right. Perfect. There you go. Thank you for that.
Maybe in Oracle wording, just a few sentences. What in Oracle is called the active data guard. So read-only replicas, the same concept you have in Postgres. And on top of that, you need point-in-time recovery somehow. So then you have both topics done if you implement that in the correct way.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Daniel. Another question is, I'll very quickly answer this. So it's what role does DBVisit have in our standby multi-platform product in the PostgreSQL world? Why would you want to use standby MP in PostgreSQL? Look, the short answer is it's for standardization, automation, and ease of use. PostgreSQL, as Daniel has very eloquently spoken over the last hour, is a community-driven project. It's got amazing features, but it is not a product-managed commercial solution. So if you do not have deep expertise specifically in that area, things can be a little bit challenging to get going. And using DBVisit Standby Multi-Platform, we do all the hard work for you and let you make very simple commands through a graphical user interface or CLI or API. Stand up disaster recovery, high availability for Postgres very, very easily. So that's the short answer as to why you might want to consider us. So another question that I've got for you, Daniel, is PostgreSQL, again, being a community-driven project, is kind of made up of a whole bunch of different utilities and executables on the command line. I appreciate that that's probably because they were developed by different people at different times. Is there some kind of high-level unifying theme behind all of them? Is there kind of a high-level overview of, well, there are utilities that do this and ones that do this and ones that do this, and some are more closely related to each other than others? Or is it a case of they're literally all different and you need to know what each one does?
The most simple answer, if you are on anything like Unix, Linux, PG underscore, that's it. Huh? That's all the commands. Of course, you have to know what they are doing. Huh? They more or less accept the same parameters like host, port, database, and so on. But check the documentation. Of course, PG dump is about logical dumps. PG restore is the opposite, loading it back. When PG verify backup should be clear what it's doing. Wall is the write-ahead log, which is called the redo in Oracle. So wall dump is dumping some sorts of redo. So you can guess from the name what they are doing. But of course, you will find details in the documentation. Just remember, PG underscore something is most probably a Postgres command, which helps you in achieving a specific task.
Cool.
Does that answer the question?
A little bit. I mean, I guess it's it's inevitable that, of course, if you're going to be a DBA for Postgres, you kind of have to know what all these things are. I was just wondering if there's like a basic table that groups these into concepts like, okay, these are used for setup, these are used for high availability, these are used for testing, these are used for automation, or whatever it is.
But what you can do, of course, go to the docs. And if for example, I search for PG dump, and then you go one up here, you are in the client applications. And this is what you've just seen on the command line. So here you can find the documentation about all these commands around Postgres.
Yeah, this is cool. I haven't seen this page before, so we might be good to include a link to this in the resources for this webinar as well.
Okay.
So another question that's just come in from our listeners is with regards to migrating Oracle to PostgreSQL. So when converting PL SQL code, is it, you know, obviously there are always differences, but is there any specific data type that you have to take care of to make sure to convert it manually, something that doesn't translate very well? Or is that too open-ended of a question?
I can give you maybe two examples. One is in Oracle, when it comes to numeric values, there's exactly one data type, which is called number. In Postgres, there's a bit more what you see here. So if it is about an integer in your Oracle number data type, then you should go to an integer in PostgreSQL and not to a numeric. This has storage implications, and this also can have performance implications. So you need to know what you want to use on the Postgres side. The other famous one is this one. So if you ask this question to Oracle, Oracle will happily tell you, yes, this is null. The problem with that is null actually means undefined. And when you ask Postgres is an empty string, what this means is undefined, you will always get false because it's just not the same thing. The reason is that Oracle implements null as an empty string, and Postgres does not do this. So in this case, Oracle is not SQL standard compliant. And if you don't take care of this, and you will see a lot of that stuff in the PL SQL code on the Oracle side, then data might disappear if you don't fix that, or it might appear when it shouldn't. So these are the tricky parts. But anyway, when it comes to transporting PL SQL to something which Postgres is understanding, PL PGSQL, for example, you anyway have to rewrite that stuff and go through all the code. There is a version of Postgres from EDB which is capable of running PL SQL, but this one is not open source anymore. So if the target is community Postgres, rewrite and take care of that stuff.
Thanks, Daniel. We're going to have to end there because I think we've got about 1 minute left on this webinar before it cuts out. So thank you very much, Daniel, for sharing all that information with us. This is absolutely great stuff. Very, very, very interesting. We will be sending out a follow-up to everyone after this webinar with the deck and with contents. Thank you, folks, for joining us tonight or today, whatever the time of day is where you are. We hope you found it informative, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. See you.